1, 2, 3. Boom! Just for our, what do we call it? Magnificent Mo? What was his name? Monster Mo?
Momo,
the Moroccan monster.
Moroccan monster.
All right. Dudes, episode 20.
We did it.
This is it. You know, they say 90% of people fail at making podcasts to the episode 20. That means we're 10% guys. What do you guys think about that? 10%? That's not bad. I wonder what the next stat is. Probably like episode like 50. What do you think the next one is? If you got to 20, what's the next one you think? 50? Because 50 feels like a lot.
50 is a lot.
50 is a lot.
100 is a lot.
I bet there's even more drop off.
The drop off is insane probably. But then there's the people no one listens to, and they'll just do hundreds of episodes. So there's.
I don't understand how you can do that.
I don't know. Maybe you just love listening to yourself.
And you have 4 views.
Yeah, 4 reviews.
And I'm 2 of them because you had me on. I played it twice. I was trying to get your views up.
All right. Well, let's kick this one off. We got a good one here. I've got a good story to share. We're going to start in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the ASOM Pod, where we talk a lot. E-com is the path that we walk a lot. From 4 point of views when we're talking shop.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to the ASOM Pod, a show by perspective from the eyes of an agency, SaaS operator, and a marketer focused on the retail, e-commerce, and D2C space. With over 55 years of experience, combined business experience, founding over 12 different companies, we're excited to bring you this episode. All right, we're gonna go around the room, introduce everyone. I've got Mr. John Roman, the Android-loving survival king. I've got Amer. I want to call you the Prince of Bosnia. I don't like this formally thing because I really think he's the prince, and he's starting to embrace it finally. Yeah. It only took me 20 episodes of beating this into him to embrace this thing. And then I've got Bryan MacDonald, self-proclaimed funniest dude on LinkedIn, and my name is Jimmy Kim. I'm the moderator and founder of Sendlane and a former D2C owner, email, all that good stuff. All right, guys, first things first. Let's talk about where people could find us. If you're enjoying our pod and you really like what we're talking about and want to engage with us, we're found on a place called Creators Combine. We've partnered with Ryan over at Creators Combine to bring agencies, SaaS operators, and marketers, unique cohorts to have a great place to have open conversations, learn, grow, and continue to do it. It's a paid membership community. Go check us out. Mention ASOM to get into the group.
And they're doing the next live event is in Nashville in December.
Nashville. So if you want to get to Nashville, hang out with us, that's where you'll find us. All right, guys, we're going to talk about the truth about fundraising, M&A, valuations, and so much more. And, you know, I think there's a lot to talk about, but I thought it'd be really fun to share a story because I don't share this story enough probably. But you know, when I went to go raise my first round, right? We've raised what, $35 million as a business right now. So I've had my fair share. I still go back to this. It's crazy people gave me money, but the $35 million worth, it's been a heck of a journey and a heck of a trip to learn. But I want to tell you guys about my fundraise trip in 2017. So I want to tell you how hard it really is to fundraise, all right? So first of all, it took me 8 to 9 months to raise my very first round. I went to go off and raise $3 million, right? As a startup with traction, doing about $3 million in ARR because we had bootstrapped it to $3 million. I went off to go raise money because I understood that I needed to show that I could sell, and then I can go off and build the platform that I wanted to. So the entire point of the raise was we needed to build this new platform that was focused on e-commerce, right? So what did I do? I traveled to many cities, right? I know that Zoom has changed us, but I went to the Bay, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, all that. Boston, New York, LA. We went on like 10 or 12 trips maybe, and we would go and do literally the thing, wearing a backpack, walking from VC to VC. In fact, to get this thing going, I cold emailed 2,728 firms. Okay, here's the stats. I've got the data around it, right? From that led me to 135 first meetings. Okay? And then from there, it led me to 29 second meetings. And then from there, it led me to 9 third meetings. And that led me to 3 term sheets that had all sorts of terms, different languages, and different sneaky things. I got ones that looked really good, but they were gonna F me right off the back because they were gonna put me in a weird position right away. And then there were some really friendly ones. And I ultimately took the one that actually had the lowest valuation, believe it or not, but had the best and most friendly terms for me as a founder, right? So I think I learned a lot from that stuff, and it's not just me. You know, obviously, Amer, you sold a company. John, you've sold and purchased back a company, so there's a lot to talk about here. But the one thing that I think that people just don't realize is that fundraising is really hard. M&A is extremely hard, and we all live in a glorified community of valuations ultimately. So I wanted to get into this and start talking about what this really meant. And every industry, and this is the first topic I want to discuss, is that every industry has different valuation formulas. But somewhere along the line, SaaS became the highlight because it looked the best, and everybody thinks that SaaS valuations what their business, especially at the brand level. We heard this 4 or 6 times top line revenue. When you zap back to 2017, 2018, when I exited mine, we're talking 18 months EBITDA. And somewhere we lost that translation. And then over 2021, 2022, we saw that spike, valuations went crazy. And then we saw them all fall, taking down rounds and down rounds and down rounds. And ultimately, many failed. I'm looking at the show notes here, and there's a great post by Jeremy Horowitz right here that John had, and we'll put that up on the screen. And it says, stop valuing your business on rev multiples. The best public e-com businesses are trading at 8x EBITDA. 8x EBITDA, guys.
Traded companies, so
these
big
are
ones.
And they've made it. They're household names, liquid, 9-figure top line, seasoned professional operating teams, access to capital markets. And if you're private, I'm reading his tweet here, private, smaller, or don't have an operating team, adjust your multiple expectations accordingly. Don't expect valuations based on the multiple. Understand that EBITDA is the multiple of your category, and size goes out, and set expectations accordingly. That's pretty powerful, because you know what?
True.
He kind of said the truth. Now, Jeremy's out buying businesses, and he's probably dealing with a lot of founders that are like, I'm doing 3 million, I should be worth 16 million. But that business has very little EBITDA. Let's say $100,000 of EBITDA a month. They're really, according to this, they're only worth 8 times EBITDA. They're only worth $800,000 at that point for a $2-3 million business. But that's real.
If they were bigger.
If they were bigger. Yeah. And he's talking about bigger, but these brand owners
200,000.
often have this problem because people think that $1 million, and you get to $1 million or 2 million, congratulations, you've done great, you've done really well. The reality is you're not really generally an acquirable business. It's too small. Why? Because who's going to acquire you? Only someone who might want to take you over. Otherwise, and I know it's not the same in the agency world, but at least in the brand side of the world, you're not moving the needle for someone to come acquire you. Like I go buy Almost Pet, let's just pretend you did $1 million a year at Almost Pride, and I'm farmer's dog, right? Buying you doesn't change anything for me. I have to buy you for a very special reason, and see, you have a manufacturing plant, and maybe I'd buy you for that manufacturing plant, but I wouldn't buy you for your revenue, right?
Correct.
And I think that brands often forget their product is often not very special.
So we sold at the peak at a 6x EBITDA, and our offers were we had a few offers, were between 5 and 7. We ended up going with the middle one because we thought it was the better partnership. But that was the peak. That was Q4 of 2021, and we're not a 9-figure company, we're an 8-figure company. We were doing a little under 20 million at the time in top line, but that was the peak. So to think that anyone's going to get a 6x EBITDA now, that's an 8-figure company, let alone a 7-figure company, it's not happening. And it's not going to happen for a very long time, if ever.
There's very few scenarios where what you were saying, Jimmy, where another company business can acquire a brand and use them for something outside of what they're like. Let's say they buy you for a brand. So they may have a huge distribution, huge everything, but their brandability sucks with that portfolio. And let's say with Oma's, they come and say, you know what? We're going to follow everything that Oma's doing, but we're going to hit economies of scale leveraging that brand. Yep. And I think that's where you can get more of multiple. But same applies to agencies. Like, I hate to say it, John, Bryan, probably have 20,000 agencies to choose from to build them a website. What makes me special? The only thing for me now in the ecosystem, we have a great reputation, great trust. That's something I could leverage. But when I get these, private equity firms coming to me, I tell them right away, we talked about this on breakfast, I know I'm not worth what I want or what I would be willing to walk away from this, giving and I also understand what you're offering me, and that's absolutely acceptable. I'm not mad at anybody, so I put myself in this position. But I think, to your point, whether it's a brand, whether it's an agency, people have to be realistic about that. Like, I've made peace with myself. It would take an incredible offer for me to walk away, but I also made peace with myself that incredible offer will probably never.
So is our agencies, obviously everybody in SaaS, it's all reoccurring revenue, it's annual, it's ARR or MRR, but
and reoccurring. So I think this is a fallacy too. It's not just ARR. It's ARR times retention times growth times EBITDA. Or margin, gross margin, right? Because those are all the formula to tell you how long the business could survive if you acquired no more new customers.
Is that the baseline for valuations?
That's the way that people think about valuation. So it's not just 1, 2, 3. Right. It's a lot of things. And then there's this whole thing, and I call this VC math, which is really interesting. Then they go for a valuation. They like to evaluate you 18 months into the future and say, if all these trajectories continue on, in 18 months you'll be doing this, and then we'll value on that. That was what was going on in 2021. which is where people are now screwed ultimately in the market because they're put into a bad position, Down rounds are everywhere. I think what was the stat, like 40-50% of startups are now taking down rounds? Just part of life.
Yeah, so, when we went through the acquisition, when we sold the business in 2021, we met with a lot of potential suitors, and it was wild. Only about maybe 50% of them dug in and asked us about churn, retention, which is like kind of important. And we had offers, LOIs, that hadn't dug in that far and had already made it the offer. And I just think those days are over. My question to you was, when it comes to agency valuations, I'm assuming one time versus reoccurring. The reoccurring is obviously more valuable for you to have customers on retainers.
It is, but there's a couple of things that need to happen. You need to have contracts and agreements, but it can be month to month.
Yeah, but you have to have contracts.
Yeah, you have to have contracts. The other thing is, it's really tricky because with agencies, one-time projects are a lot more valuable typically than retainers. There are very few agencies that are doing 20, 30, 40, 50,000 a month retainers. That's hard to find. The majority of the agencies that I speak to, retainers are between 48,000. Now, the ad spend agencies can have a little bit of a advantage there compared to dev shops like us, because if they do a really good job, their spend goes up, and if they have a percentage of that, so does their revenue. For me, it's really hard to say, hey, let me take somebody from a $4,000 retainer to a $10,000 retainer if you don't have the work or the need. It's just a much, much harder sell. But I think where we do a really good job is retention. If you look at our book of business, how long have you been with us? 4 or 5 years now?
Yeah, 6.
6 years. Our average, so we have currently 36 retainers in our portfolio. 22 out of those 36 have been at least 2.5 years with us.
Yeah, that's impressive. Yeah.
Salvin advisors, data's on the rise, helping e-com brands smash profit highs. Not just AI, real humans with a plan, entrepreneurs with data in their hand. Understand, this ain't funny, like Keenan and Kel. Is that your P&L? What the hell? You need some help, and that's okay. So what are you waiting for? Hit up Salvin today. No, seriously, your P&L looks like an episode of Botched. Do yourself a favor, head on over to salvit.com today.
So, I think this is interesting. Now, Bryan, you're sitting on the other side, and I think that I would love to hear your perspective, right? I want to take how you think about when you see companies talking about their valuations and like how you perceive them on the outside, and maybe giving the perspective as a person who might join the company, even how you think about these things and the importance behind it. Because like a lot of the things is like you're coming as an executive, in my opinion, like you're an exec, and that usually means that you have a goal to help the company do something, right? Yeah. I don't know what Almost Pride's goal is. Maybe you can share a little bit on that. But like, how do you look at that perception within your side of it?
Yeah, so I think Adam and I have sat down a few times and talked about this, where we see each other working together for like a long period of time outside of Almost Pride. And I think our goal is to get us to $50 million a year. But also by doing that, what I want to do is get into, I'm not going to go in like too much detail of it, but doing more collection of data within our business, right? So I think when I look outside looking in, especially with like valuations today, one way to sort of get creative in regards to when you're ready to exit is leveraging a larger vertical, but that larger vertical that aligns with your customer base. So for us, there's not a lot of research done on raw food diets, right, or fresh food diets in comparison to kibble, because a lot of kibble companies own those labs, they own those vet clinics. But as the space continues to grow in fresh food and raw food, I was telling Adam, I see it as like an opportunity in like say 5-10 years from now, if we have this in place where we also offer a service where we can, whatever the kit looks like, some sort of data collection kit with a relationship with a lab, we're able to collect and say, hey, these are the true benefits of our food and what we've seen occur over time. And we offer like free testing kits on when you hit 6 months on your subscription or 12 months on your subscription, so you can see the actual science behind the improvements of your diet behind the food. And when I look at that, the sooner we start that, which I want to do in the next year or two, the sooner we can get something like that going, the more we can leverage our exit in regards to what we're worth, because we may be only worth at the time, say $50 million, which is that's our goal. It's a big company, but it's not a massive farmer's dog or whatever. But what I want us to have something that no one else has, which is data, and scientifically driven data, which no AI or computer can emulate. You have to get that from the consumer and the product. So I see like us leveraging that while growing the business And that being like a thing that we talk about all the time is like, as him and I like become partners in this and do things down the road before we get to that point, is thinking outside more of just the subscription element and your top line revenue element. How can we capitalize on the exit by having something that a larger vertical wants that we have?
So you're being realistic on the valuation of the business today, and you realize in order to create that bigger valuation, you have to help drive something very unique, differentiating that people want. And you're right about the data. Data drives everything. And again, if you have more data, I think that we've seen that with many of these, like with blood plays that we've seen, right?
Yep.
You see that the data is what people want. It's also kind of scary. Dogs a little bit less because it's dogs, and like I love dogs, but like they're not going to go like exploit the dog thing versus humans, right? There's that weird thing that comes into place. So as you guys think about this, and I want to continue on with this, Bryan, like fundraising. Have you guys ever talked about fundraising?
Yeah, a little bit. Adam tickled his tummy a little bit on. Have you ever heard that term, by the way? Tickle your tummy?
Tickled your tummy?
Is it
Tickle your tongue?
It's tickle. You're tickling. You're just tickling.
If you're tickling,
yeah, he was tickling. The idea of it, right? And now it's not going anywhere now. I don't know if it'll go somewhere down the road. But Almost Pride's been bootstrapped. It's just a family business, right? So all pretty much profits go right back into the company. And I think it's important for them because multitude of reasons. One, there's older family members still alive that are a part of the business. So it's not as attractive even years ago when money was flowing around because there's so many people that are already a part of it, right? So now you're trying to convince second generation, third and fourth to agree upon something that they own a little bit of. And, so that piece of it, I think, was like the main reason why they never explored it heavily in the past. And then also, I think now that they understand more since I came on how the e-commerce world works in regards to like, wow, like we just got up to 5 million on one channel, just doing like basic things, and now taking just a little bit more budget, a little bit more budget, a little bit more budget, and putting into the things that actually propel and accelerate the growth of the company. That's what we'll start to do when we switch over to the new website. And now they're like, okay, well, let's hold off on any sort of like funding or capital because it didn't make sense at the time with all the people on board, but then also they never saw what the company could do if it's run the right way on the e-commerce side of the business. So I think now they're...
So you're saying fundraising actually helped open up some thoughts basically, right? Like you went off and, that's a funny story because when you do talk to these people and they start saying stuff, and let's be honest, all of us, I'm sure in this room, that sometimes you're like, what the hell are they talking about, right? But you go home and research it and you're like, and then you realize how important it is sometimes.
Yeah.
It's something you do.
And it's something too where it's like, it's cool to be a part of that family business where a lot of brands try to accelerate as fast as possible. And, they want to be a legacy brand. And I don't think people that create brands today necessarily want to be a legacy. They don't want to pass it down to generations and generations. They want to try to accelerate growth and get VC money and get funding as much as they can to grow as quickly as possible to exit because everyone wants short-term money now. And it's a different perspective coming from a brand that just wants to grow a little bit, but be around for a very long time. So their intentions of the business are different than new people coming into the space.
And you know one of the things that's funny about this whole growth thing that people get really kind of blown up on. People want to grow so fast in the world. But like in like banking world, if you see a business growing more than I think 30% year over year, they consider you a high growth company. But people are like talking hundreds of percentage points all the time. And
it's dangerous.
That's such a dangerous mindset that comes into place. And I think, again, I go back to this thing, like I think media has glorified what fundraising and valuations have been and what the truth is. Here's the biggest truth about valuations. That doesn't mean anyone's going to buy you for that dollar.
Yeah.
It just means that some human has done some math and made a decision that that's what your business is worth. And people are so proud of it. It's absolutely crazy how people get proud over that when that's not going to help you drive the actual outcome of the business.
Just like Shark Tank, right? We were talking about Shark Tank.
Yeah.
People come in with these wild valuations.
Yeah. Which means, it's not like they're just being crazy.
Yeah,
like,
they heard it on media.
Someone told them or they had a conversation and came to the conclusion, I'm going to go on live television with this wild valuation.
Yeah, they're like, I wanted that at a $5 million valuation and I do $250,000 a year.
Because what they forecast 10 years down the road, that's not how this works.
I was talking to someone at Commerce Roundtable, and as a business partner, and they're going to think about possibly finding a potential suitor, but the business partner has in their mind, this is a D2C brand, that it's a multiplier off of top line revenue. And that's just so difficult.
The interesting part to me too is like if you even get away from the business world, if somebody knows that somebody is running or have grown a multi-million-dollar company, $2, $3, $4 million in sales, they already assume that that person is a millionaire. and that is not the case. And then a lot of times, kind of look at the drop shipping bros and all of that stuff. If you're looking at Instagram, when people interview people, they said, "Oh, I made $3, $4, $5 million." Whatever. I can say the same thing, but then people also don't unveil the curtain to say, "I had this cost of goods to deliver that, and then this is what this labor." Yeah.
I had this marketing advertising cost.
And there's a lot of
Actually
these
didn't make anything.
people are just faking it. They're
But
truly faking
I'll sell
it.
you my course, and that's where I'm going to make my money.
What is it?
But they want to sell you their course. That's where they're going to actually make money.
Exactly. Like, who's this person? Why? But a lot of people want to fake it, and they want to project themselves as these like uber successful individuals. And there's nothing wrong with being proud of even starting a $50,000 business. Like, you should be proud.
Dude,
if you're
there's nothing wrong. It's
yeah.
Your happiness is within your means, right?
Exactly.
Like, it depends on what you want to live out of life. If I want to own a convenience store down the street and make 250 grand a year, no employees, run it myself and just make my profit, but I'm happy, that's a good business. But that doesn't mean you're ever going to sell for some high valuation, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the fundraising and valuation, I think the twofold. Fundraising has gotten easier per se because there was more liquidity. It's now hard now, but it was liquidity. D2C, for example, brands until 2021, like no one was really giving money to brands. It was only because some VC or somebody said, "Man, this is it. Let's all birds. Let's go put money in. Let's go do whatever it might be. Let's go kick it off and fund the fuel of the growth because it's obviously repeatable because they're using these channels and things are working." At the high level, it made sense, but the fundamental of the fact that, again, I always say it, e-commerce is not a business. It's just a channel that supports your brand and your product, right? And I think that people often misconfuse that as a business model, right? And that's where I always say, like, there's a difference between that. And I think that leads us to the bigger part of this conversation is like, what does it mean to be actually acquired? And I know that we all have stories of versions, or to be the acquiree at this point, right? I'm gonna start with you, John. BattlBox, like, you have a story. I know you can't share all the details of it, but I'll give you the TLDR right now, which I love about the story. He sold it and then he bought it back, and now he's off building it again to hopefully sell it off one day again.
Some would say a shorter version of the Dave Portnoy story.
Were you holding on to that one? Or?
I was like, man, how can I bring this up on this podcast? Great opportunity.
So we sold in, ultimately the peak in late 2021. We sold for a little over a 6x EBITDA. We actually had a lot of offers, and it wasn't the biggest offer we took. We had some pure private equity offer that was several million more, but it was very clear that we were just going to be a spreadsheet, and decisions were being made on a spreadsheet. And the reality is a lot of our team would probably not have survived because they had in their portfolio people that did the same thing. Our guys weren't going to win that fight. So ultimately we went with Amer Commerce. They spoke the same language as us. Their model was kind of cool. It was these independent business units. So we were still
a SPAC, right?
Yeah. It was a SPAC out of Toronto, and it was these individual business units where we were still running. We had our parents, Papa emerged, the parent company, and cash would flow up to them, profits, etc. And certain decisions, we'd obviously involve them, but the day to day, we were in charge. Everything started off great. Now we were, call it timing or wise decision. We had negotiated all of the stock out of the front side of the deal. So we got about 60% cash up front. The other 40% was all tied to earn out and goals and staying on. So, that worked out well for us. And then to no fault of their own, the story of the SPAC over the couple of years of the market, their market cap, they got killed. And fundamentals not changing. Fundamentals might have even been improving, but their stock prices were just going down. And that was the case of Emerge. And they had some debt, interest rates, and you got to pay your debt. So about a year and a half in, we ended up buying it back in April of last year, 2023. We were able to come to a mutually beneficial deal. They needed some cash to service debt, and we wanted our little baby back. So we did it. It ended up being, we didn't do a full exercise on working capital and stuff like that. We just agreed on a price that we knew was beneficial to both sides. We could bring that much money to the table, and they wanted that money. So yeah, it was a significant discount from where we...
Let me ask you a really interesting question, because before we even get into the M&A part of it that I want to dive into a little bit, what makes you as a founder? Okay, so if I'm a founder and I sell something, I don't know if I want it back.
And we didn't want it back initially. The reality is, there were 3 of us, business partners at the time of acquisition. One was the driving force for us selling. We were either going to buy him out or sell, and it doesn't make sense. It never made sense for myself or Patrick to pay a 6x EBITDA, just because we weren't going to, that meant it was going to take 6 years to pay it back unless we were able to figure out a way to gross exponentially, which we knew exponential growth, short of, figuring out and smashing all of retail, wasn't going to happen. So, all right, we've got to stop. I have no idea what your question was.
What was my question? Oh, I wanted to know why you would buy it back.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So you were talking about, so you knew you couldn't pay it back, so you had to be forced to sell.
Yeah. So that wasn't, our business partner wanted out. So he retired when we got bought.
Okay.
The two of us were left. Our CFO stayed on, who's now one of the three partners on the buyback. But we had a 3-year deal. We were going to be out. We were going to all stick around 3 years. There was significant payday to do so.
Right?
And each anniversary, year 1, year 2, year 3, there was a nice payday. And the potential with future growth made that third year very attractive. So we were going to stick around for 3 years.
For the money, right?
Yeah, for the money. And, we didn't probably put enough value in our emotional attachment to the business, how much we cared about it, honestly, how much we cared about our customers and just the BattlBox community. And we saw what was happening to the market, and we saw the likely outcome of what was going to happen to BattlBox. And it was a combination of that and honestly just pure arbitrage opportunity. We saw an ability where we had already gotten paid, we had already gotten our payday, and yes, it was only 60% of it, but it was still significant money.
That's a big piece to this, by the way. 60% means that, the number you got versus what you actually got was very different.
Yeah, 60%. We only got around a 4x EBITDA.
In the cash, right?
Yeah, in the cash. But we saw the opportunity where we could take that money, and the original plan was not touch any of that at all. We were just going to bank that. Thanks for the sale. We were going to buy it back when we were going to raise money. We were going to raise all the money, go traditional private equity VC route, get that money and play with someone else's money. It just seemed like a great arbitrage opportunity. And then obviously rinse and repeat and sell it again once the economy got into a better spot.
Yeah, it's always interesting when and I asked you that question as a founder because there's a lot of great stories out there. Like, here's one of my favorite stories I hear about in this world. Tony Shea, the late great founder of Zappos, RIP, like he passed away. His story is in, I think it was like 1998. He was part of this company called Link Exchange. Okay. And they got acquired by Microsoft. And like 50% of his tie down was to a 2-year performance, like a golden handcuffs. He hung out for like 3 months, I think, and then he quit. And he said, I'm just going to go off and build something else. And he ended off to go off and build Zappos. So like he did pretty well doing that. Right. But I don't find it very often where a founder brings it back and ownership and like taking the second time around. And I found it interesting why you did it. It was, you kind of treated it, I mean, there was a little bit, obviously, the passion and belief and everything else that comes with it. But like, it really is a money opportunity at the second time around too.
It was pure arbitrage.
Amer, like you sold an agency. I think you've had a really unique story. It's been quite a while since that story has happened, but you want to break it down a little?
Yeah, I mean, we were fast growing, very small boutique agency at that time. Quite frankly, we got very lucky. We were working with kind of the Cinderella of Shopify at that time of e-commerce, Movement Watches. Movement Watches, for those that don't know, went from 0 to 100 million in 5 years. We were a full service agency, but we were also servicing a wide spectrum of merchants. So at that time, one of our clients was in the IT sector, and they wanted to expand our services to their clientele because it was very much alike. Plus, the John, who was the owner of the company, had some ideas for to build product and things like that. And my co-founder, Alan, myself, were a good complement to that, plus the team that we were bringing along. To ultimately, what led to it is we didn't have much as a company at that time. We had credibility, we had brand equity, because we worked with Movement Watches. Everybody wanted to work with us. So like, what was one of those things? But we weren't making like really good money. And Alan came to me. His wife was pregnant with their child, Esma. Esma, I think is like, 9 years old now. And he basically said, look, I need to find a job where we have really good healthcare because I have a child to take care of. And we have two options. I walk away, you keep 100% of the business, or we have this opportunity to sell and we go there together. My immediate reaction is we built it together, we go together. Yep. It's just that simple to me. So we ended up selling it. I said yes, and we had another partner, Lou. So Lou and Alan were for it. I was actually against selling it. And to this day, I feel it was the wrong thing to do. Wrong thing to do from a perspective of financials of the deal.
Yep.
Not, to help Alan, not to where I am today.
Yeah, you don't think it was a good deal?
Yeah. It just wasn't a good deal on paper, given how much I had sacrificed. And the name of the agency at that time was Lumia. And when I looked at it, I believe be fully transparent, I would get to work at either like 6 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock in the morning, depending like on traffic and things like that. I would work very late, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. I would go to my car, turn Uber on. It just came on in Chicago, and I would drive Uber for 4 or 5 hours, go home, get up in the morning, and do that over. And I lived off Uber money. Now, even with that, I still felt it was a wrong decision to sell because I know how much I risked, how much effort I put in, and dead return. So like now when we talk about selling Praella, I have that in the back of my mind.
Sure.
Of what would on paper financially make me very, very happy to do. And there's a number that I know in the last 6 years how hard I worked that no acquirer in their right mind is going to pay me.
So it's an unrealistic number.
It's a 100% realistic number.
Okay.
And
but at least you know it's unrealistic.
100%. I know I'm absolutely crazy, and I tell that to acquirers right away. This is what it's going to take, and if you are way off of that, like we shouldn't talk.
How do valuations work typically with agencies?
EBITDA. They look at EBITDA.
What is the multiplier range?
It depends. I spoke with a few companies, and it's a 1.5 to 4.
Yeah, I've heard EBITDA, I've heard clients, like the client roster list, and I've heard acqui-hire, like team hire. Like, hey, I want to go bolt on like a retention team. Oh. So like if you're a retention agency, that's like the structured or Taylor Holiday CTC model. Yeah. That's what they do is they, instead of going out and learning a specialty, they go hire an agency bolt on an agency that helps them go accelerate that.
Almost like what your first acquisition was an IT company that wanted dev agency.
That's exactly right. And that's a reason why people make the decision to make the purchase ultimately. But I think it's interesting with M&A, right? Like I have not sold anything official. Well, I've sold businesses, but they weren't like big M&As, like nothing that are exciting to talk about. But I think the other side of it is also buying businesses, right? You guys ever buy a business? Either of you?
Bunch,
yeah. I think buying a business is really interesting because it's a heck of a lot of work to buy or sell a business. Even buying a business is not like, hey, the BattlBox, like I'll just go buy it, right? Like it's like you really got to put a lot of energy into like the research, and deals fall apart all the time.
Yeah, deals fall apart.
Carnivore Club?
Yeah, we bought. Yeah, Carnivore Club was probably one of our better acquisitions. We probably made, I think, 4 or 5.
You bought it and then flipped it, right?
Yeah, we bought Carnivore Club in July 2019, and then went into the pandemic. Meat being delivered to your home when you're locked was a pretty good timing, and then we sold it. We packaged Carnivore Club with BattlBox.
Oh, so that was a part of that 6X deal.
Yeah, but the irony with that is the baseline was trailing 12 months, and Carnivore Club was actually an EBITDA loser in the trailing 12 months.
Wow.
So it was actually a detractor technically from the deal, and we were like, we'll take it out. But they were like, no.
No, we wanted.
Did you buy Carnivore Club back as well, or no?
No, we only bought BattlBox back.
Carnivore Club still exists, so
it's still there.
Out there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That is dedicated to all the brands out there who are struggling with subscriptions. To the people out there with churn rates higher than their mortgage. Y'all called the police on us when we were just trying to get you on recharge. And now look where you are. You know what I'm saying? It's all good, baby, baby. It was all a dream. Welcome to the recharge scene. Retention just double, celebrate with your team. So watch your churn go down. Every single day we said that recharge will turn you around. There's 20,000 brands that they serve. If your first name is Jay, they'll make your last name Curve. Trusted, robust, and dynamic. They'll make you money while you're laying in the hammock. Just kidding. I wish that was how life worked.
I've been looking to actually acquire a smaller app. And one of the reasons I want to do is like a smaller app because I've never acquired a business before, and I want to, in case it fails, it's very less financially straining. But I've had issues with what these founders want, and it's like ridiculous numbers. We're talking about an app that might be doing 20,000 MRR, and they're looking for 3-4 million.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it just
it's tough to get a ROI on that.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to do it from an experience exercise, and I think. And I believe that given what we done with Hulk apps and everything, that I can build another app for 20,000. But
that's what I was going to go into, like the build versus buy mentality starts coming in.
My thing is, what I think I'm really good at, I think I'm really good in operations. And I'm very tough on myself. I'm very good at taking emotions out of the decisions. And I know we discussed like my layoff thing and letting people go, but there was a lot of operational things that I did. I didn't just sit back and say I was cutting things, I was making moves. Like you said earlier, like we look at the people to be let go as the last resort. And I think it should always be the case because you're impacting real lives. I feel like I'm a very good operator because I look at things very objectively, including how well or poorly I do something. I'm probably the biggest criticizer
Sure.
of everything that we do, but I want to be able to take a company, because I have a team right now. I have a team of 125 people. If I buy the right app, I do the acquisition the correct way, onboard and transition everything, my operational cost to now deal with that app and that revenue acquisition, it doesn't go up. I'm still using the same team. My P&L only changes because I'm bringing in more revenue and I'm diversifying my revenue as an agency. And that's kind of like what I want. Then I want to do a 20,000 MRR, get to 50,000 MRR, 100 MRR, God willing, maybe a million MRR one day.
So 20,000 MRR, and you're saying
That's 240K ARR.
200, yeah. So 240K a year, but you're saying your existing current OpEx can handle all of that. So you're just adding arguably revenue and profit.
So are you looking to buy something because you don't have the idea of what to build? Because what I can tell you about M&A, which is interesting, and as someone who's been on the other side who's almost sold their company multiple times along the journey, the first time came up like 2020, right by COVID. There was a company that wanted to buy us. We went and spent probably 30 days plus working on so much stuff until they just said, we're probably not going to buy. We passed, right? And then the second time when I was raising my Series A, I had a company approach me and wanted to buy. It gave me an LOI. We spent time on it, and then that imploded, right? Now, why I'm telling you this, as I look at a lot of those businesses doing all those exercises, dude, they probably spent so much time trying to acquire that they could have probably built what we were working on at that point. And like, to your question there, your statement about buying a small app, why not just build it at this point?
Build a better one.
Purely, phase one of it, it's a selfish exercise for myself.
Okay, so you just want to acquire something.
I want to acquire something. I want to know what that looks like.
I'll sell you BattlBox.
Why'd you laugh at him?
You don't want to buy it?
Why?
Catch a deal.
What's your MR?
Call like 1.5.
I'm at 20,000.
He got it. He only wants 14x EBITDA.
Yeah.
I'll cut you a deal.
14.5. 0.5 for Jimmy.
But I want to do it for that. The other reason, and it's what we talked about a lot, I think it's a good time to get a good deal. And I think a lot of these apps are just buying time. But we're going to start to see one aggregation. We're going to see a lot of them merge to survive. And we're just going to see a ton of SaaS shut down because they're not going to last. The idea for me behind it is to get a bunch of apps that already are good, have the good technology, have a customer base that I don't have to deal with the marketing aspect. Now, I have a distribution. It's very easy. But the idea is to understand how that works and be able to, when I'm ready to do something bigger, that I'm not afraid to say, I don't know what this is going to look like. I got to hire the team. I got to do this. I've gone through it on a small scale. I'm going to be a little bit more comfortable to do it in the future, whether it's another agency, whether it's a SaaS solution. And I think I understand the SaaS space, so I'm not scared of it, but I also don't want to I'd rather make $100,000, $200,000 mistake than $1 million mistake.
Yeah, well, if you acquire something, you're going to make a couple $1 million mistake at this
depending
point.
how big it is.
Yeah, you're right. But 240,000, even if you think about it at 3x, which is probably right, it's still a $750,000 to $1 million acquisition for a $20,000 MRR company.
But the thing is, when you look at those finances and you see that this company doesn't have cash to burn anymore, the conversations have to change.
Yeah, I guess you'd have to have a strong belief in the problem that it's solving, because to me, at a 20K MRR, there's no PMF really figured out yet. And so it's a big risk that the product is actually going to stick.
Well, to me, it's easy because I have the distribution. I would talk to 200 brands a year.
Yeah, but it still doesn't mean that the product's going to stick.
There's
a difference between that.
But I wouldn't buy a product I don't believe in. It's not just about let me go through the exercise for fun.
But it still hasn't been proven at that point.
It still hasn't been proven at 20K is what I'm trying to say. You get one company to come on there, they can implode your entire system.
But remember what you said before, and this is a big problem with a lot of these companies, because majority of the apps in the shopper ecosystem, I don't believe they even do over 100K.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they're very small.
Don't.
The problem is these guys are the developers. They are programmers. They see an opportunity. It's easy to build. They don't know how to sell. They don't know how to market.
Well, they say 9,000 or 10,000 apps in the Shopify app space, right?
Yeah.
400 of them do.
I think there's 12,000 now. Yeah.
Okay, well, only 400 of them do over $1 million ARR.
Holy cow.
Think about that number. And then I think it's less than 75 to over $10 million ARR. Think about that.
Yeah.
It's extremely hard. I mean, I think people underestimate what ARR in a SaaS business really means. I mean, what do they say? Only 0.2% of SaaS companies ever get to $10 million in ARR.
Yeah.
Put that into perspective, 0.2%. What's that equivalent to in brand world? $100 million ratio? It's hard to scale.
I know a developer that worked for me, he built a bunch of apps now. He spun off, he wanted to do his own thing. really good apps, really good code and everything you can say, nothing is happening with them.
Yeah, distribution, dude.
Yeah.
I've told you, like, as I continue to build businesses, the thing that I think about is all about distribution. Everything else is easy.
Yeah.
Distribution is the hardest freaking thing that comes to the market.
And the thing is, if you don't have it, you better be comfortable with the amount of effort it takes to create it.
Yeah. Bryan, any thoughts on this as you're listening in? I know this is like not in the same thing that you always do every day, but I'm sure you have a perspective as you hear this stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, it's interesting. I think about it a lot in terms of like where I want to go, where I want to be. And it's interesting because the more that I'm involved on like the day-to-day operational, like high level stuff at Almost Pride, the more I'm starting to understand different things that I never used to think about in regards to, you know, strategies that, you know, we want to implement in order to exit. Or after that, Adam's, you know, him and I have had a conversation, like, you know, we had a talk one day, the boomers now, generation, not to get off topic, but are getting old. And they're the biggest generation in America right now. And there's not enough rooms for them at these convalescent homes. There's not enough old people homes. It's going to be a huge market in the next 5 to 10 years. So like we were talking about that. All right, let's look into, just for ha-has, let's look at an entry point of either building one together or buying one together, going through that exercise, because I see that as like a huge financial opportunity when the boomers get sick and need to go in the homes because there's not enough room for them right now. They can't go anywhere. So that's going to be like a huge market that...
For some reason, you know, I know we're not even, this is completely off topic, but as he was telling me that, there was a movie where there's a guy, I think Ben Affleck played in, that he used to like beat the elderly people or whatever, like at the homes. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I was thinking the movie where he got small.
No, not that one. There was one where he plays a role where he's like...
An abusive...
Yeah, like he's like the secret of... Oh, I know, it was an Adam Sandler movie, Happy Gilmore.
Happy Gilmore.
Was that Ben Affleck? I'm pretty sure. Or was it Ben Stiller?
Ben Stiller.
Oh, okay.
Ben Stiller.
Yeah.
For some reason, I just see you as that right now.
The grandma's sewing, and then she's like, "Oh, my fingers hurt." He goes, "Oh, your back spot hurt because you just pulled landscaping duty."
See?
And she's like, "What?" Yeah.
See, I feel like you'd be a perfect person for it. Sorry, I just
What about daycares though? I think there's...
Oh man, daycares are great too. Now, I don't know if I want to own multiple of like. I would love to just like own one thing. I don't want to have to open up 10 daycares.
But daycares are just printing money.
I know they are. They really are. But here's the issue though. But daycare wise though, it's eventually those costs will go down just due to population decreasing. I think they said if the population rate stay the same in the next 45 years, we'll have half of the U.S. population that we have now. But the immediate return I'm seeing, and quote me on this, we'll save this video 5 years down the road, the biggest financial opportunity in the United States is going to be old people homes.
Hot take for me,
boomer generation.
I think we're probably going more to the European style when it comes to youth and elderly care, where people live with each other because of economics, where people are going to buy
I can see
on top
that.
of each other.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys were both saying the same thing, just different versions of of the outcome.
But my question, have you guys ever, like, I know when I visited your guys' offices and you were showing me, giving me a tour, you mentioned like one of the farms was going out of business and you guys need to find a new supplier and all of that. Have you guys ever thought about acquiring and getting into
like going
recreational farms and
vertically?
things like
Yeah,
that?
they did it. They used to raise almost 30,000 turkeys every year. Yeah. So that farm that they were on, right? It's the issue with farm life is the farm life, I guess you could say. Like I've never owned a farm, but from what I heard, it's a very tough business to do at a small scale and then continue to grow. Land's very hard to get, right? And now you're looking into different ways that the turkeys or chickens or whatever are raised. They get sick. Are you a company that believes in treating them with antibiotics or not? And now you're looking at like a small like gross margin to, off-sell to either a grocery chain distribution company, or you go like your Highland Park markets and your smaller stores. But it's a very, very high volume but extremely low margin business. That's at least what I've heard from their stories of raising the turkeys in general.
It's just tough.
It's very,
and that's it's probably not a bad business in that, like, to make money if you get the scale, but it's a bad business to acquire, and it's a bad business to sell because what you said, margins are bad, right? But if you're a guy or whatever and you're making, let's just say again, 150 grand, like a Chick-fil-A franchise where you can go make, and I think they said an average makes about 150 grand as a Chick-fil-A, even though they'll do millions of dollars, it's because the costs, right? Everything goes into it, but that doesn't mean it's a bad business. It just purely means it's not the right business for an acquirer, right? And I think that's something that you have to realize is like, what is the business you're building? What is the goal of that business? Is it lifestyle? Is it to sell it, to exit? And I know all the gurus and the financial books, they talk about how you got to plan for the future future and make the thing go back and stair step. But most people don't have that kind of thought process because don't have the business acumen. That kind of goes back to the finance folks, right? Like financial literacy and everything I'm hearing lately, it's crazy how much financial literacy is talking about more. This is what people need to learn right now, and it's the thing that people haven't learned, which is why we're in this weird situation and bubble where we've got SaaS companies worth billions of dollars that are not anywhere near that worth $1 billion, but they need to be right now because now they're in a weird rock and a hard place, right? If they go to raise more money, they're gonna take it down round. Yeah, so otherwise they gotta preserve, and that's all part of the fundraising side of things. With that, guys, I wanna wrap this episode up. I think we got into all sorts of things here. It was a really interesting episode. We've never done one like this, and we thought it'd be really fun to do. It gave me some really good stories, a lot of things to think about ultimately, and that quote from Jeremy that I read earlier is quite interesting when you think about how he's problem, and we were talking about this, why hasn't he been able to buy a business? You made a post about this on LinkedIn at one point, like, why can't he buy a business? Well, here you go, buy. Yeah. Expectations are wrong. Yeah. It sounds like right now in the market.
Unrealistic expectations.
Is it maybe we need to let them get beat up more to get to a place, because a lot of these businesses that are for sale for high amounts of money, like you said. I almost bought one this past year in SaaS company, right? Try to buy it. I said something, then they fought me back after I gave them an offer, right? And guess what I did? I just passed on the deal, and guess where they exist today? Nowhere.
Gone.
They could have, they're gone.
Good.
They could have taken a deal from me, which would have not been very good, but it would have been something. Guess what they got? Nothing, because they were unexpected. So this is like the lesson to learn, I think, is be realistic, be smart. When you're taking money in, like my recommendation to every founder is first, understand what the difference is. And we'll get into this in the fundraising versus bootstrap thing, but understand what the goal is. Work backwards at the highest level. You don't have to get financial, but think about what you want to do. Is it really, I want to make money? Because raising money and that doesn't make you money until the long run, versus how can you optimize to make money today? Short term versus long term is very much a thought here. But with that, that's episode number 20, the truth about fundraising, acquisitions, and M&A. Please like, comment, subscribe. Tell us if you enjoyed it. Give us suggestions. We're always open for those. And you can follow us on social media, on X, TikTok, IG, LinkedIn, YouTube, anywhere you can type in ASOM, ASOM. Go type that out. And don't forget to go check out our website at awesompod.com to subscribe. We're launching a newsletter soon. We just want to be good about this. We want to at least alert you about the latest and greatest pods. And of course, if you're listening to this and you're not watching us, please check us out on a video platform like Spotify or YouTube. We are a video first platform. We spent a lot of time traveling and enjoying each other's companies, but also doing this because A, we're not distracted, but B, I think the dynamics are really strong when it comes down to that. So please check us out. The next episode we have, and I'm really excited, we're going to get a little tactical again. We're talking about, and I named this episode, my favorite marketing tactic. And we're gonna go get tactical. We're gonna share stories about things we did that really worked really well that we probably repeat over and over. I know that I just repeated at a Commerce Roundtable, and I'll tell you guys what the formula is, because I have a formula that I follow over and over again, and dude, it's very rare that I miss on these things, and there's a reason for that, because I've really understood that. All right, with that being said, thank you for watching this pod. We'll see you on the next episode.
Welcome to the ASOM Pod, where we talked a lot. E-com was the path that we walked a lot. But now the question is, will you subscribe or not?